What ICE is doing is state-sanctioned thuggery. It must stop. Republicans must work with Democrats to find legislative solutions to restore order and public safety. Congress has the authority and the moral obligation to act. What's missing is Republican will to act.
2 people are dead in Minnesota. They were killed by federal agents on American streets. One was a mother in a minivan. The other was a legal gun owner and a nurse. The administration calls one of them a terrorist. Senators are calling this state-sanctioned thuggery. Tonight, we are not looking at politics. We are looking at the breakdown of the rule of law. We are looking at what happens when the government turns its weapons on its own people and refuses to answer for it. This is not a debate. This is a crime scene. The administration and its defenders have made a specific claim about the violence we are seeing in our streets. They claim that the federal agents operating in our neighborhoods have the right to act without restraint. They claim that when a citizen is shot in the back by a federal agent, that citizen is a domestic terrorist.
Then, instead of conducting the most basic oversight, the administration has attempted the most blatant cover-up. Instead of even acknowledging this was a tragedy, they tried to slander a VA nurse as a domestic terrorist. This cannot stand in America.
They claim that the agents involved possess complete immunity from consequences. That is a lie. It is a lie that contradicts the Constitution. It is a lie that contradicts the statutory authority of Congress. And it is a lie that is being used to justify the killing of American citizens. We must be precise about what is being said. We must look at the exact words used to justify these actions. Following the killing of Renee Good in Minnesota, the administration did not seek justice. They sought to absolve themselves of responsibility. According to Senator Padilla, the administration sent a clear message to ICE agents. They told those agents that they had complete immunity. That is the claim. Complete immunity.
In the wake of Renee Good's tragic death a few weeks ago, it didn't take the administration long to try to blame her and send a message to ICE agents that they, according to the administration, had complete immunity. Number one, no, they don't. Number two, it's the opposite message to send.
Then, less than 3 weeks later, another American citizen was killed. His name was Alex Prey. He was a nurse. He was a legal gun owner. He was acting as a legal observer. When he was killed, the administration did not investigate the agents who shot him. Instead, they attacked the victim. The administration explicitly tried to slander this VA nurse as a domestic terrorist. This is the definition of the lie. The lie is that federal agents are above the law. The lie is that any American who questions them or observes them is an enemy of the state. The lie is that the executive branch has the authority to issue a license to kill without oversight. We need to look at the evidence of what is actually happening on the ground. This is not speculation. These are facts entered into the congressional record by senators who have reviewed the footage and the reports. First, look at the case of Renee Good. She was a mother, she was in a minivan, she was trying to drive away. Federal officers and agents killed her. The evidence shows that there was no attempt at de-escalation. There was no coordination with local law enforcement. There was simply lethal force applied to a civilian in a vehicle. Second, look at the killing of Alex Prey. This happened less than 3 weeks after Renee Good was killed. The evidence shows that Alex Prey was a legal observer. He went to help a woman. The forensic reality of the encounter is brutal. He was tackled, he was disarmed, and then he was shot in the back. He was killed in broad daylight. The evidence proves that he was a legal gun owner with the legal right to conceal and carry. He was not committing a crime. He was exercising his First Amendment rights to observe law enforcement and his Second Amendment rights to bear arms. He was killed for it. The evidence extends beyond these 2 killings. It establishes a pattern of conduct. The evidence shows that these federal agents are wearing masks. They are refusing to wear body cameras. They are not carrying proper identification. They are operating as anonymous agents.
Third, we want masks off, body cameras on. Federal agents must be prohibited from wearing masks. They must be required to use body cameras, and they also always have to carry proper identification. No more anonymous agents, no more secret operatives.
Senator Schumer has placed into the record the fact that these agents are roving bands, knocking down doors without cause and without legal warrants. They are kidnapping people off the streets in unmarked cars. This is the forensic reality. We have video evidence. We have witness testimony. We have the statements of United States senators describing state-sanctioned thuggery. The evidence proves that this is not accidental. It proves that the agents are following a specific operational mode. They are deliberately refusing to coordinate with state and local law enforcement. They are operating in the shadows. The evidence proves that the administration is aware of these tactics and is encouraging them. The evidence does not prove that these agents were in danger. It does not prove that the victims were threats. It proves that the government used lethal force against its own citizens and then lied about it.
ICE and CBP are not above the law. I also want to be clear about this. This is not a political or even a policy disagreement over immigration. It's about the responsibility of the federal government and everyone representing federal departments and agencies to operate lawfully and professionally.
We must understand the power dynamics that allow this evidence to exist. How does a federal agency acquire the power to operate as a roving band of anonymous agents? The answer lies in the funding. The power to act this way was purchased. Republicans in Congress voted to give Secretary Noem and ICE what Democrats describe as an enormous slush fund. This was a specific transaction. The Republicans voted for unprecedented funding, but crucially, they voted for that funding with no oversight. They voted for it with no accountability. They voted for it with no requirements to coordinate with local police. This money acted as a blank check. When you give a federal agency a blank check, you are giving them the power to operate outside the rules. You are giving them control. Senator Schumer stated clearly that Republicans voted for federal agents attacking, detaining, and killing Americans simply because they disagree with the administration's tactics. The control here is absolute. By removing the guardrails, the administration seized total control over these units. Under President Trump, Secretary Noem, and Stephen Miller, ICE has been unleashed. They are not answering to local laws. They are not answering to the Constitution. They are answering only to the power center in the White House that tells them they have immunity. This power is being used to intimidate. It is being used to suppress. We see this in the detention facilities. Senators have witnessed horrible conditions in California, Texas, and Maryland. They report that the people being detained do not have violent criminal records. They are being held in conditions that are inhumane. And we see the ultimate objective of this power in the letter from Attorney General Bondi to Governor Walz. This letter demanded voter rolls. It had nothing to do with public safety. It had nothing to do with border security. The power of the federal law enforcement apparatus is being used to demand access to voter data. Senator Padilla identifies this clearly. It is a desperate attempt to hold on to power. It is an attempt to rig the next election. The power dynamic is clear. The administration uses the funding provided by Republicans to create a militarized force. That force terrorizes communities and eliminates opposition. Then, the legal system is used to demand voter data to secure future power. It is a closed loop of control. The money fuels the violence, and the violence protects the political power. We must look at the defense. What is the argument provided by those who support this funding and these tactics? The strongest defense argument, articulated by Republican leadership, is that withholding funding for the Department of Homeland Security creates a dangerous gap in national security. They argue that we cannot have a government shutdown and that Democrats are endangering the country by refusing to pass the DHS appropriations bill. They argue that the government must remain funded to protect the border and enforce the law. We will dismantle this argument using the law and the sources. First, the claim that Democrats are blocking the government from functioning is false. There are 5 bipartisan bills ready to go. These bills cover 95% of the federal budget. Democrats have agreed to pass them immediately. Senator Murphy stated, "We can pass those 5 bills, no problem." The only thing stopping the funding of 95% of the government is the Republican refusal to separate the DHS bill from the rest. Second, the argument that the DHS needs this specific new funding immediately to function is false. A substantial portion of DHS is already funded. This includes increased funding for ICE that was previously allocated. The agency is not out of money. It is out of accountability. Third, the argument that this funding creates law and order is contradicted by the facts. You cannot claim to support law and order while funding an agency that violates the law. Senator Schumer pointed out that Americans support law enforcement, but they do not support a federal agency that routinely operates above the law. Republicans talk about the First, Second, and Fourth Amendments, yet they are funding agents who shoot First Amendment observers, kill Second Amendment gun owners, and violate Fourth Amendment rights against warrantless searches. The defense collapses under scrutiny. You cannot defend the Constitution by funding its violation. You cannot defend national security by terrorizing American neighborhoods. The Republican argument is that we must fund the government, regardless of what the government does with that money. That is not a defense. That is an abdication of duty. They are choosing to protect ICE from accountability over American lives. The defense claims they want to keep the government open. The reality is they want to keep the, quote, slush fund open. We need to understand the legal principles at stake here. There is a phrase you might remember from civics class: co-equal branches of government. This is not just a phrase, it is the law. The president is not a king. The executive branch does not get to spend money however it wants. The Constitution gives the power of the purse to Congress. This means that Congress decides how money is spent. But that power comes with a responsibility. When Congress allocates money, it has a legal obligation to oversee how that money is used. In 1974, Congress passed the Impoundment Control Act. This law established that the president cannot ignore the funding decisions of Congress. But the reverse is also true. Congress cannot ignore how the president uses that funding. If the executive branch uses federal funds to violate the constitutional rights of citizens, Congress has the authority and the duty to stop it. This has happened before. In the 1990s, after the incidents at Ruby Ridge and Waco, Congress used this authority. They held hearings, they rewrote use of force policies, they established independent review boards. They did this because lawmakers from both parties understood that federal agents operating above the law threatened the entire system of government. The legal principle is simple. Authorization requires accountability. If you give the government the power to use force, you must ensure that force is used legally. The Fourth Amendment protects you from unreasonable searches and seizures. The First Amendment protects your right to speak and observe. The Second Amendment protects your right to bear arms. When a federal agency violates all three of those amendments, Congress has the legal authority to withhold funding until those violations stop. That is what is happening now. The Democrats are using their constitutional authority over the purse to demand compliance with the Bill of Rights. They are demanding that federal agents wear identification. They are demanding that agents follow the law. This is not a political tactic. This is the basic function of the legislative branch checking the executive branch. Now, we must render a professional judgment on responsibility. Who is responsible for this? And are they fit to hold the power they possess? The responsibility begins at the top. The sources identify Donald Trump, Secretary Noem, and Stephen Miller as the architects of this chaos. They have made the choice to unleash these agents without guardrails. They have made the choice to send the message of complete immunity. They have made the choice to slander a dead nurse as a terrorist. This demonstrates a complete lack of fitness for office. An administration that views its own citizens as targets is not a government. It is a threat to the people it is sworn to protect. But the responsibility does not end there. It extends to the Senate. Leader Thune has the power to end this standoff today. He has the power to separate the DHS bill and pass the funding for the rest of the government. He is choosing not to. He is choosing to bind the fate of the entire federal government to the protection of a rogue agency. Senator Schumer asked a question that goes to the heart of this judgment. How many more videos do they need to see? How many more citizens need to die in broad daylight? The refusal of Republican leadership to act in the face of this evidence is a dereliction of duty. They know the facts. They know the agents are masked. They know the warrants are missing. They know the citizens are dead. And yet, they refuse to act. We must also judge the agents and the agency leaders. When you have a culture that allows agents to drive away after killing a mother in a minivan, you have a failed institution. When you have an agency that tackles and shoots a man in the back for observing them, you have a criminal enterprise operating under the color of law. The judgment is clear. The individuals directing these operations, Noem, Miller, and the officials protecting them, are responsible for state-sanctioned thuggery. They are responsible for the chaos. They are responsible for the deaths. They are not fit to command a federal law enforcement agency. We do not make these judgments alone. We rely on the authority of those who have examined the evidence and hold high office. Senator Chuck Schumer, the Senate Majority Leader, states unequivocally that this is chaos created at the top. He states that ICE has been unleashed without guardrails. Senator Patty Murray, a senior member of the Appropriations Committee, confirms that Republicans voted to cut Secretary Noem a blank check. She confirms that these agents are roving bands operating without legal warrants. Senator Chris Murphy states that the killing of Alex Prey was an inflection point. He confirms that the administration attempted a blatant cover-up by slandering a VA nurse. Senator Alex Padilla states that the administration sent a message of complete immunity to its agents. He confirms that the demand for voter rolls is a desperate attempt to hold on to power. These are not anonymous sources. These are United States senators. They are the people charged with overseeing the federal government. They are telling us on the record that the government is killing its citizens and lying about it. Their authority is backed by the video evidence, by the autopsy reports, and by the pattern of conduct they have documented. Even the public record reflects this reality. We see the comments from citizens watching this unfold. We see the demand for a vote of no confidence. We see the recognition that these authorities should be held to a higher standard, not a lower one. The authority of the people aligns with the authority of the senators. They see the same truth. Where is the accountability? Where is the Department of Justice? Where are the courts? We are witnessing a failure of institutional accountability. The Department of Justice, under this administration, is not investigating these crimes. Instead, Attorney General Bondi is writing letters demanding voter rolls. The institution that should be enforcing the law is being used to subvert it. The internal accountability mechanisms of ICE and CBP have failed. There are no independent investigations happening from within the executive branch. That is why Congress must step in. Senator Schumer has called for independent investigations to enforce accountability. He has called for a uniform code of conduct. The courts are the next line of defense, but the courts move slowly. While lawsuits may eventually be filed, they cannot stop a bullet today. They cannot bring back Renee Good or Alex Prey. The failure of immediate accountability is what allows these agents to continue operating. If there is no fear of prosecution, there is no deterrent to violence. We see the breakdown in the specific demand for reforms: masks off, body cameras on, proper identification. The fact that we have to demand that federal agents wear identification shows how far the institutions have fallen. In a functioning system, anonymous secret police do not exist. In a functioning system, agents who kill citizens are arrested, not defended. The institutions are failing to hold the powerful accountable, and that is why the legislative branch must use its ultimate weapon, the power of the purse. What happens now? We do not deal in hope. We deal in procedure. The consequences are strict and they are approaching fast. There is a deadline. The government funding is set to expire. There are 5 bills ready to pass that would fund 95% of the government. The consequence of passing these bills would be stability for the vast majority of federal operations. However, the procedural block is the Department of Homeland Security bill. Democrats have drawn a line. They will not pass this bill without reforms. They will not fund the quote-unquote slush fund any longer. If Republican leader Thune refuses to separate the bills, the consequence is a partial government shutdown. This will affect childcare. It will affect clinical trials. It will affect air traffic control. These are the procedural consequences of the Republican refusal to negotiate. The mechanism for resolution is simple. Leader Thune can introduce an amendment to separate the DHS bill. Senator Schumer is confident this would pass overwhelmingly. If that happens, the government stays open, and the fight over ICE funding moves to a separate negotiation. If that does not happen, the funding lapses. The money stops. The blank check that Senator Murray described runs out. This is the only leverage Congress has left. They cannot arrest the agents, they cannot fire the secretary, but they can cut off the supply of money that fuels the operation. The choice is binary. Either Republicans agree to split the bill and negotiate on accountability, or the government shuts down. There is no third option. The Democrats are unified. The 6 or 7 Republicans who have signaled they might support this split may be the deciding factor. Until then, the procedural consequence is paralysis. The videos will remain. The demand for answers will remain. And the question of whether the United States Congress can rein in a rogue agency will remain the central conflict of this government. We will watch the vote. We will watch the leadership. And we will see if the United States Senate has the will to stop the quote-unquote state-sanctioned thuggery that has taken the lives of Renee Good and Alex Prey. That is the case. The evidence is in. The judgment is yours.